Good afternoon, everyone. We are starting to move board members and staff over to panelist mode so that they can turn on their videos and sound. So we have Chair Hoag and Director Kale. You guys should be enabled now. Let's see.
Thank you, Mary Michael.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon. Emily, you should be good to use your sound. Director Silvera.
I got you.
Good afternoon. Christine and Eric.
Good afternoon. Playing with my camera.
Stacy, you should be.
Hi, everybody.
And Director Serrato, you should be able to use your camera and mic now.
You see me and hear me?
Yes, I did hear you. Let me. Something on my window.
I can see myself. I look older than I did 2 months ago for sure. A lot older.
It happens to the best of us.
Only Silvera, only Scotty looks younger the more he does this stuff.
I doubt that very much. I feel like I'm starting to get a few more gray hairs.
Let's see. Alicia, we'll get you moved over. And Shane, we see you. We'll get you moved over when it's time for the CAC report.
You're getting gray hairs because you had me as a trumpet teacher, Scott.
Yeah, I know. That means we're both getting a little bit old there, Mayor.
Oh, I know. I actually got some gray hair in my head. Hey, last night I read your that was a beautiful email you sent regarding Jerry and Bruce. I read them in my comments in the meeting last night. Perfect. Thank you. You bet. That's a big hit to our county, man. All at once.
Mhm.
Mary Michael, this is Alicia, just checking sound.
Yes, ma'am, we
Thank
can
you.
hear you.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
We see Mr. Agar, we see you. We will enable your sound and video at the Caltrans report. And we have a phone number ending in 667. Is that a board member?
Hi, Mary Michael. This is Blake.
Hi, Blake. Supervisor Pedroso, give us just a second. We'll get your audio and your camera enabled. And Supervisor Pereira, we see you've come online as well. Just give us 1 second. And for those members who have joined us for the members of the public that have joined us for the workshop towards the end of the agenda, we will get all of your audio and video enabled at the time of the workshop.
What are you doing?
Supervisor Espinoza, we see you. Give us just 1 second.
Rodrigo, you need to smile. There you go.
Hello, this is Joy. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have 9 out of 11 directors online. We can continue looking for the other 2, but I defer to you when you would like to start the meeting.
Okay. Well, since it's 3 o'clock, why don't we go ahead and start? Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of the MCAG Governing Board to order. The time is, and my clock is wrong, so what time is it? 3:04?
Yes.
Okay, see, I'm off by 5 minutes. Joy, will you please take the roll, please?
Thank you. Director Aguilar. Director Kale.
Present.
Director Espinoza.
Present.
Director Faria.
Here.
Director McDaniel.
McDaniel, present.
Director Nagy. I'm sorry, Director Nagy. Director Pereira.
Present.
Director Pedroso.
Here.
Director Serrato.
Here.
Director Silvera.
Present.
Chair Hoag.
Here.
Thank you, and we do have a quorum.
Okay, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand up. Right there. Okay, ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Oh, where'd you guys go? Okay. Number 2 is the approval of the agenda. Do you have, are there any directors that have any comments on the agenda?
McDaniel, move to approve.
Okay,
Maria, second.
all right. Joy, could you please take roll?
Director Aguilar. Director Kale.
Aye.
Director Espinoza.
Yes.
Director Faria.
Yes.
Director McDaniel.
McDaniel, aye.
Director Nagy. Director Pereira.
I vote aye.
Director Pedroso.
Aye.
Director Serrato.
Yes.
Director Silvera.
Aye.
Director Hoag.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, number 3, the next item is public comment. Before we open the meeting up to public comment, I would like to ask everyone to join me in a moment of silence to honor Jerry O'Banion, who passed away on Valentine's Day. Jerry was a lifelong public servant from Dos Palace who was a champion for MCAG, Merced County, and a friend to so many of us. So please, let's have a moment of silence. Thank you. Honoring him on Saturday, they will be having a graveside ceremony at the Dos Palace Cemetery at 1 o'clock, if anyone is interested in going on Saturday. And then Pastor Rivers also passed away, and his ceremony will be at 12:30 on that same day. So anyway, very sad for Dos Palace. We've lost some great leaders. Okay, public comments are now open for anyone to speak on matters not listed on the agenda. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Stacy, would you like to provide instructions on how people are to submit public comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The instructions are on the screen, and I will just share that to be recognized to speak, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. This can be found on your smartphone, tablet, or computer. If you're calling in from your phone and not using Zoom to view the meeting, please press *9 to alert the moderator of your desire to speak. Individuals who wish to speak will be recognized in the order that they raise their hands and will be taken off mute by staff at the appropriate time. Comments submitted by email or voicemail in advance of the meeting will be read by staff or after in-person comments are taken.
Okay, Mary Michael, have we received any public comment by phone or email, or do you have anyone who wishes to provide comments to the board today?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. I did not receive any public comments in advance of the meeting today for any item on the agenda or for public comment, and I do not currently see any hands raised at this time.
All right. Well, then we will move on to item 4, a quarterly financial report, and I'll turn it over to Nav if you would like to call out.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. So this is for those new board members that joined the MCAG board. MCAG oversees a lot of agencies, not just MCAG, but Regional Ways, Transit, as you all know. So what I did was I combined all of them into one letterhead style, and I'll just go over each entity and their major components of revenues and expenditures. So this is our budget versus actual as of December 31st. We'll start off with the MCAG MPO function. As you can see, the revenues and expenditures are below our budget. There's a couple of factors to those reasons why revenues and expenditures are below our budget. 93% of all of our revenues are on reimbursement basis. So beginning of the fiscal year, we were supposed to have 3 transit studies conclude. 2 of the transit studies are going to conclude in the second half of the fiscal year. So if you look down the line for major revenues of federal funding, it's only at 20%. So once we conclude those 2 transit studies, our revenues will go up accordingly, and will still be lower than our projected revenues. That's because the 3rd transit study will probably not start until the fiscal year 21-22. Moving on to the expenditures, our salary and benefits are lower due to the Family First CARES Act and some vacancies. So the Family First CARES Act is a reimbursement that agencies get if they go on leave due to COVID related issues. Our professional services, as I mentioned, we had those 3 transit studies that are supposed to start and conclude this fiscal year. 2 of them will conclude in the second half, and those reimbursements and those expenditures will come in the second half of the fiscal year. So far, does anybody have any questions regarding the MCAG budget? None. We'll move on to the Measure V. So Measure V, we're budgeting $15 million in Measure V revenues. That $7.2 million is as of October. So we still have November, December, and January and February that's still outstanding. As you can see, we're already at 48% of our budget. We are in line to meet our budget and exceed that budget by maybe $1 million or $2. Moving on to the TJPA budget. As you can see, the revenues are far less than our expenditures. And that's due to, if we move to the revenues line item, if you see the CARES Act funding, that's on a reimbursement basis. We have to get all our expenditures for the first 6 months before we request reimbursement for those funds. And at the time of when we did our expenditures, we haven't received, as of December, we did not receive our contractors' October, November, December's maintenance invoices. So if you look down to the service contractors invoice on our expenditures, we're only at 19% of our total expenditures according to our budgets. So once we receive those invoices, we'll be able to request reimbursement from the CARES Act funding. Also, the state funding, it's always in the rears. So when we talk about first or second quarter, we won't get those funds until the 3rd or 4th quarter of the fiscal year. So those funds are always lagging. And that's why right now we're only at 18% instead of 50%. Local funds, that has to do with Farebox and our partnership with UC Merced and Merced College. The only funding that we get right now from the local funding is our partnership with UC Merced. Merced College, we have stopped billing Merced College and collection of Farebox for the first 6 months. So that's why we only have 1% of our local funding. Moving on to our expenditures, our maintenance is in line with our budget. Obviously, it's a little bit lower, but we're still waiting on those 2 or 3 invoices that are outstanding by our contractor. Fuel is much lower. It's two reasons. Number one, it's because of our route reduction, and the second part is because of the fuel cost just being a little bit lower than what we anticipated for the fiscal year 2021. So far, any questions regarding TJPA? None. Moving on to regional waste. As you can see, regional waste is doing fairly well. The revenues exceed the expenditures by $6.6 million. All of our expenditures are below our budgeted items, and majority of those big expenditure ticket items will happen in the second fiscal year. But one thing I do want to know, even though we have a $6.6 million surplus, that money will be used for future capital that we have budgeted that haven't been funded yet, and also our CIPs. And we also have unliable liabilities, which are the landfill closures that we have to fund as well. That's underfunded as well. So we have to put away money for those to make sure that when time comes, we have funds to close the landfill at the proper time. That concludes my presentation. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes, Chair.
Yes.
This is Lloyd. Nav, on the CARES Act budgeted amount, what have we spent that we have not? I mean, has money been spent out of the CARES Act funding already? And what?
Yes, we've already spent the money, and they like to reimburse in big chunks. So we spent about $3.2 million of the $5.2 million so far. By the time we do the reimbursement, I think we should be able to reimburse the full $5.2 million for it.
Okay. And then could I get a list of those itemized amounts?
Sure, no problem.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, thank you, Nav. We're going to move on to item 5 is the Citizens Advisory Committee report, which will be provided by Shane Smith. Go ahead, Shane. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. Thank you for having me joining you today. It's good to see everybody. Forgive me, it's my first day. I'm not sure exactly what our report looks like, but I just will happily tell the board that all of the action items on your agenda today were discussed and considered by the Citizens Advisory Committee, and all were passed with good discussion, but were passed unanimously out of our committee. The one exception is the Transit Joint Powers Authority for Merced County audited financial statements that you'll review later on this afternoon. There was consensus that those statements were in good order, but we were unable to pass them out of committee. A couple of members dropped off and we lost our quorum. So I will forego reading through the punch list of items. I'll just mention for the board's consideration, one thing that stands out in my mind from the committee's discussion, there's a lot on today's agenda about looking where housing is going and where population is in terms of transportation planning. The committee just suggests that you also consider where the jobs are, whether they're in the county or out of the county, and what the modes of transportation are to get to those jobs and those sources of income. So with that suggestion, that general suggestion on the table, Madam Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Good job.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so we're going to move to into the agenda of Merced County Association of Governments. Item 6 are information items. do any of the directors have any questions for staff on these items, which are the calendar meetings, minutes for January 13th, the newsletter, quarterly report, and a letter of support for San Joaquin Rail Commission 2022. Any questions?
I see no hands raised, Madam Chair.
All righty, then we're moving on to item 7, calendar. Unless there are any directors who would like to pull an item from a separate consideration or action, these items can be acted upon with one motion. So it's minutes of approval for January 21, appoint Lucas Diaz and Erica Segura for Measure V, approve and adopt 2021 federal transportation improvement. And those items are on the consent calendar. Do we have a motion?
McDaniel moves.
And Faria second?
Okay, all those in favor. Oh, are we supposed to do a roll call? Sorry.
Thank you. Director Aguilar? Director Kale?
Yes.
Director Espinoza?
Yes.
Director Faria?
Yes.
Director McDaniel?
McDaniel, aye.
Director Nagy? Director Pereira?
Yes.
Director Pedroso?
Aye.
Director Serrato?
Yes.
Director Silvera?
Aye.
Director Hoag?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, so we're moving on to number 8, action items. These items will be presented one at a time by staff, and public comment will be available during the consideration of each item. So item 8A is a request to accept the MCAG audited financial statement for the year ending in June 30, 2020. Nav, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just going to walk through our MCAG financial statements. I hope you guys see it. Okay, so this is our MCAG financial statements, our assets and liabilities and net position summary page. Our capital assets grew in an amount of $6 million, and that's because of Measure V funds cash that we received. Also, one of the things that we did in this year's financial is when we talk about Measure V transit, that isn't transit funds for the bus. It's just for transit purpose. So what we did is we moved those dollar amounts from the transit budget to the MCAG budget, because those funds are held by MCAG, not the bus. So that's an increase of the cash that we have on hand. That's what caused the increase in our current assets. If you go to our liabilities also increased because of now we held those funds that are not spent. Those are unearned revenues that are liability to the agency until we spend those funds. And moving on to the revenue expenditures. One of the biggest items is we had a lot of regional projects start and complete in the fiscal year 1920. So you'll see that $5.3 million is what we paid for the East and West Side regional projects of Measure B. Moving on to this is basically summarizes and breaks it up by each fund from the slide 2. You see the MCAG General Fund, and then the MPO Fund, RTIF Fund, Safe Fund, and Passenger Rail, Measure V Regional Funds. And then this is the new fund that I was talking about that we moved over from TJP, is the Measure V Transit Funds. These are the revenues and expenditures by each fund that happened throughout the fiscal year of 1920. One of the things that we changed in fiscal year 1920 is, as you can tell, there's no LTF in here. We moved that to a special fiduciary fund. So fiduciary funds are funds that are held by the agency for other agencies' use. So STA, the state exchange funds are basically the RSTP funds, LTF, and then the Measure B funds. That One of the things I do want to point out is there was no financial findings this fiscal year. Last year's financial findings we corrected, and this year there's no financial findings. So that concludes my presentation. Does anybody have any questions?
Okay, are there any questions? Oh, Mr. Silvera.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Nab, I know we talked a little bit yesterday. Just want to congratulate you on another well put together set of financials. I always check these things. I don't go through them line by line, but one of the things that I look for always is are there any findings? We corrected the findings from the previous year, and proud that we don't have any findings in this year. So that tells me that you're doing what you're supposed to do so that we get clean audited financial statements. And so with that, Madam Chair, if there are no further questions, I would make a motion to accept the MCAG audited financial statements for the year ending in June 30th, 2020.
Pereira, second.
Okay, Joy, if you'll do a roll call, please.
Madam Chair, just for the record, I see no hands raised for public comment.
Oh, sorry about that. Okay.
That's okay.
Director Aguilar, Director Kale,
Yes.
Director Espinoza,
Yes.
Director Faria,
Yes.
Director McDaniel,
Aye.
Director Nagy, Director Pereira,
Yes.
Director Pedroso,
Aye.
Director Serrato,
Yes.
Director Silvera,
Aye.
Director Hove.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, moving on to item 8B is a request to appoint a board member to the 2021 Ana Maria Fuentes Scholarship Selection Committee. Mary Michael, do you want to report on that?
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. The item before you today is a request for the board to appoint one of its members to sit on this year's Scholarship Selection Committee. This ad hoc appointment happens every spring, and it's a neat opportunity for a board member to work with MCAG staff and the Fuentes family to select one lucky and usually pretty smart local high school senior for this scholarship. The time commitment is very minimal, and all the meetings will be done virtually this year. We continue to have enough voluntary contributions to offer this scholarship to a new student, as well as meet our obligations to past recipients should they remain eligible for scholarship renewal. And just so the new board members, as well as the members of the public know, this scholarship is funded completely by donations from staff and members of the community. So if anyone is interested in contributing, please let me know and we can work with you on those details. The application period for this year's scholarship closes next Friday, the 26th, and the committee's work will be completed in March with the recommendation coming back to the full board in April for approval. Happy to answer any questions.
I just want to speak out to say that I did it last year, and it was a nice thing to do. You feel really good about it.
Madam Chair, this is Stacy. If just add the one note for our new board members, if you haven't been familiar with this program, this is in memory of a staff member here at MCAG. Anna was here at the MCAG office, several years ago, and this scholarship has been continuing since her passing. It's probably Mary Michael, you might know the date, but many of us had an opportunity to know her or work with her, and so we're happy to continue with this tradition.
Okay, I see 3 hands, so who wants to go first? Mr. McDaniel.
Thank you. I'd just like to say this is great for a new board member, and I'd like to encourage maybe some of the folks who are teachers or affiliated with education. I've served on it and appreciated it very much. And I think it's really important maybe for a newer board member to do it and really get the gist of what we're doing here. And with that, it looks like I would either nominate Josh Pedroso or Tom Faria, whoever would like to step up and do it. Looks like Josh has raised his hand.
Tom, did you have a question?
Oh, I raised my hand to volunteer for the committee, but if Josh would rather do it, that's fine, whoever.
Then I nominate Josh Pedroso.
I'll second that nomination.
I'll accept it.
Okay, so do we do a motion, or was that the motion and now we do a roll call?
Correct.
Were there,
Director Aguilar? I'm sorry?
go ahead. Sorry.
Director Kale?
Yes.
Director Espinoza?
Yes.
Director Faria?
Yes.
Director McDaniel?
Aye.
Director Nagy? Director Pereira?
Yes.
Director Pedroso?
Aye.
Director Serrato?
Yes.
Director Silvera?
Aye.
Director Hoag?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, moving on to item 8C is a request to affirm the One Voice delegation decision to conduct a virtual trip. And again, Mary Michael.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. Staff is returning to you with an item regarding the direction of the One Voice program this year. Last fall, the board adopted the One Voice goals and schedule as usual, and after a lot of discussion, directed staff to proceed with program development with the intent of conducting an in-person trip to Washington, D.C., with the caveat that there may need to be a shift to a virtual trip should challenges pertaining to the coronavirus pandemic persist. Staff proceeded with all aspects of the program as directed and convened the One Voice delegates appointed by the jurisdiction starting in January. However, it became evident to the delegation that an in-person trip would not be possible this year. So even though we're no longer under a shelter-in-place order in California, most agencies in Washington, D.C. are still employing COVID mitigation measures such as telework for staff and closed-door policies when it comes to in-person meetings with the public. Our federal lobbyist from Townsend Public Affairs inquired with many of the offices and agencies we typically meet with and confirmed that there was no indication they'd be returning to in-office work schedules anytime soon. And also when they do, if in-person meetings with the public would even be allowed. So given the need to plan for travel logistics and scheduling meetings here soon, the delegation decided by consensus that it would be best to adjust our planning efforts to focus on a slate of virtual meetings this year. These meetings will be scheduled for the same 4 days in May that the delegation would have been in Washington, D.C. And Townsend Public Affairs is confident that they can coordinate a successful trip for our group in this manner. However, this is ultimately a board decision, and to that end, staff is requesting that you take action today to affirm the conclusion of the One Voice delegation members. I'm happy to take any questions if anyone has any. Thank you.
Director Silvera.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, as one of the people on the committee, and after much discussion, I think we came to the most logical solution. And so with that, I would make a motion to affirm the One Voice delegation decision to conduct a virtual trip.
Kale, second.
Okay, Joy, can you please do a roll call?
Thank you. Director Aguilar? Director Kale?
Yes.
Director Espinoza?
Yes.
Director Faria?
Yes.
Director McDaniel?
Begrudgingly, aye.
Director Nagy? Director Pereira?
Aye.
Director Pedroso?
Aye.
Director Serrato,
Yes.
Director Silvera,
Aye.
Director Hove.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, moving on to item 9, our discussion items, which will be presented one at a time by staff to allow directors to ask questions and provide staff direction as appropriate. So item number 9A is the Caltrans report. Do we have a representative from Caltrans?
Yes, we do, Madam Chair.
Okay.
We will move Mr. Agar over. Just give us one moment.
Thank you.
And for the record, Director Nagy, I believe, is also online now. Mr. Agar, you should be able to use your mic and camera now.
Very good. Can you hear me and see me, at least at this point? Very good. And before I begin, if I could ask if we could allow, also I got 2 other members that joined me this afternoon. My deputy for planning and local assistance, Marlon Regisford. I'm assuming he's joined us as well. If you don't mind having him allow us to join here. And also, I want to introduce also my new deputy for maintenance in District 10. If you could allow Mauricio Serrano, who supposedly have joined us in this meeting. So if that's
Absolutely.
possible.
One moment.
Okay, very good. And as you get them on board, I'll just go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board, Executive Director Stacy Guzman. Thank you very much for allowing me to give a Caltrans report. Dennis Agar, the District 10 Director. First, I'd like to, in behalf of Caltrans and in District 10, also send or give our condolences to your loss to Jerry O'Banion. I have worked with him in the past, only have pleasant memories working with him in his area. And I just know it's a great loss for your governing board and of course our partnership with Caltrans. So our thoughts and our condolences go to the family members, of course, and to this board. I know there's new members here who don't know me, but I look forward to working with all of you in our partnership. I continue to enjoy the partnership that we have with Stacy. I'd like to continue that working relationship. If any of you as the board members have concerns or issues, please, I know Stacy likes to work through her to get to me, but of course, if there's any other issues that need to be in my attention, I'm welcome to be here to help. With that, I hope that our other 2 members have joined us from Caltrans.
Yes, good afternoon, Dennis. Can you hear me?
Okay, I hear you, Mauricio. So let me start with introducing my new Deputy District Director for Maintenance, Mauricio Serrano, and hopefully you have opportunity to turn on your video cam too, so everybody knows who you are. And if you could just give a little introduction about yourself, I would appreciate it.
Yes, right now I have my camera on. I'm not sure if I can be seen. I can see my name across the screen.
That's okay, Mauricio. Go ahead and just
okay.
I don't see you in the camera as well.
Okay. Yes. Good afternoon. Like Dennis said, my name is Mauricio Serrano. I'm the new Deputy District Director for the Division of Maintenance. I'm fairly new to the job. I've been here 5 weeks now. I worked for Caltrans for 23 years. I'm also new to District 10. I have previous experience working in other districts, District 1, 3, North Region, and headquarters, but I'm very excited to be part of the District 10 team. I'm looking forward to working with all of you. Very excited to be here. If there is anything you need from the Division of Maintenance, please feel free to contact me. Please don't hesitate. I'm here to work together with all of you. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Mauricio. I just have a few items that I'd like to cover, and then give the opportunity to Marlon to cover the rest of the updates, Madam Chair, and then we can answer any questions that your board may have of us. I sent all of you, and I apologize for the late letter, but at least I like to try to give this board on a quarterly basis a complete, comprehensive update of everything that's going on in Merced County, whether it's capital projects, maintenance projects, or even operational studies, investigations, along with maintenance activities. So I hope you find that information valuable, and if there's any questions, as mentioned in there, Marlon or I would be willing to address any other updates that you need. Some of the updates that we did provide in there is even our efforts with a few of the task forces that we've continued to progress on. And one of those task forces, the Hillmar School Safety Task Force, which we have another status update coming up next week. So I look forward to that discussion with our partners in regards to that task force. And we'll continue providing updates as we move along in these critical and important projects to the communities. So I hope, again, the quarterly letter, although very long, you find useful for your information. As far as the federal status and what's going on in USDOT, I'm sure most of you have heard that there was a press release from the federal administration regarding a notice of funding opportunity for another infra grant that's going to be available to go out to the nation. The money we're talking about is $889 million for this fiscal year 21 funding, and these are again for the infra grant award program. And I hope that California would receive some of those dollars for projects that are important to the communities and counties across the state. I'm hoping District 10 and the counties that are within District 10 will be successful in any of these grant applications. There is a quick deadline on this. It's due March 19th. This could be all found in their USDOT webpage. So if you're looking for more information. So I wanted to share that good news that's coming out of USDOT. As far as Caltrans, overall, the state, we continue to telework due to COVID, even though the numbers are going down. We're still having to, for those who can telework, we'll continue to telework, and that's going to go through at least to May, unless we get another update from our Cal HR department in regards to any relief in there. In regards to other efforts that we're doing here in the district, we are working together with Stacy and the other 8 COG directors along the valley. We're talking about a partnership that both District 6, Diana Gomez, my counterpart, District 6 director, myself, are hoping to hold a successful State Route 99 collaboration summit this coming spring. We do have a visioning session tomorrow morning with all 8 county partners and also some of the other stakeholders in both districts. So again, I look forward to that discussion and hopefully come to a consensus of how we're going to conduct that summit and hopefully accomplish all the outcomes and objectives that we are looking forward to. So more to come on that. Lastly, as mentioned in the letter, we continue to deal with the challenges in litter and encampments. And we appreciate, again, the communication and the partnership that we have with Merced, especially on those common areas that we've had challenges in both those areas of issues. I do want to offer up our District 10 task force that works with, deals with homelessness, litter, and encampments to provide a quick presentation of all the background work that we do to address these issues. And I'll work with Stacy to see if that in a future board meeting, we can bring Mauricio back and along with our lead person for the task force to give a quick update and presentation of that process. So if that helps, we're willing to do that. I'll stop there and ask Marlon if he had anything else to add.
Thank you, Dennis, and hopefully you can hear me as well. Thank you to the board, thank you to the director, and thank you to Madam Chair. I'll just add a couple of things on, and Dennis provided quite a bit of information, but there's a few things I wanted to just add on. And also thank you to the board for your previous comments in the last meeting. We're continuing to address those, especially the investigations that we are initiating. So we'll have further updates on that. But I really wanted to make sure that the board is aware of our District 10 Caltrans Active Transportation Plan. I believe I mentioned this before as well, but we're continuing to look for comments and questions, concerns from our local partners. And we have an online survey that we have available for folks to participate. And that is still ongoing. So we're looking for feedback, whether it be in English or Spanish. This is at survey.catplan.org. I'll paste that in the chat so you have that information. But we are looking for feedback on our active transportation strategic improvements moving forward. And we hope to have the plan completed hopefully a little bit later this year. And we're looking forward to coordinating with Merced County and all of our local partners on these efforts. The second thing I'll mention is our CTC, California Transportation Commission, recently allocated a little more than $570 million to transportation needs across the state. And, you know, this is based on the need for a growing network of mass transit, bicycle, and pedestrian routes. And I just want to highlight, because our region did receive a project funding. This was a little bit east of here in Mariposa, but the Ferguson Rockshed project, which is kind of near the entrance to National Park, it received more than $30 million from the state. And this is to remove talus from the rock slide at the project site. So there's going to be construction in a future phase for a rock shed at that location. But it's very good to see the CTC allocate such a large amount of funding to our region. And we're hoping that this will help, and we're going to continue to advocate as our district for needs in our area. So we're happy to see that. I also want to highlight two other main things. Our EV fast charging, that is something that's a statewide effort for Caltrans, but recently there's been news, and we just had a press release that they installed, when I say they, us, Caltrans installed 22 new EV fast chargers across the Central Valley, but these are mostly in the southern end of the valley, Tulare County, Kern County. And so this is something that's encouraging and is reflective of our state priorities, our executive order N7920. I'm bringing this up because we'd like to encourage this discussion with our local partners as we look to implement EV charging stations in District 10 area. It's a great opportunity to enhance our sustainability, and hopefully we can start to have those discussions even more in the future on the northern side of the valley and the Central Valley. And the last thing I'll mention is our LC TOP program, which is our low carbon transit operations program. We have our workshop coming up in the next week. This is actually on the 24th of February from 10 to 12 a.m. or 10 a.m. to noon. And this is from our Division of Rail and Mass Transit. And we really want to make sure that we provide the information available, especially regarding our transit agencies and the eligibility for funding. You know, we want to give that information and make sure that our local agencies have a chance to apply and have a chance to really understand what the capabilities are for this funding program. So if you have any questions on that, I'd love to hear it. And if you'd like to email Tom Dumas, our local contact, please do. And with that, I think that's all the updates I'll provide for today. If there's any questions, I'd love to hear it, and I'll pass it back to the board. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Redford? I don't know if someone.
I have my hand raised.
Yeah, Director McDaniel, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Nice to see you. And we're glad that that you are here to give us these updates. I have one that I've been working through the city of Merced, and I think it's not the city, it is Caltrans, but the newly installed stoplight at the corner of Highway 59 where Santa Fe ends and comes into Olive Avenue. Eastbound coming from the Atwater area. So when you're doing eastbound and you approach the stoplight, it will miss a few turns. And I can say I counted 3 the last time that it happened. I happened to be the first car. So it does continue to skip those. And I don't know if it's in conjunction with the train crossing or something. And I did notice if there's not a car in the left turn lane, it will not trick to a green light. And that traffic is a main commute route from the city of Atwater or Winton community in the Beechwood Franklin area traveling in, and you'll get quite a few cars backed up there in the morning whenever that light doesn't trick. So I didn't know if maybe if you've had a maintenance crew look at it or what the approach is on that.
Yeah, good question. Thank you, Director. We'll definitely take a look at that. It could have something to do with our loop detector. I'm not quite sure, but we'll look into that for sure. You got it.
Yeah, we appreciate you bringing that to our attention. We do have our traffic signal operations team that could revisit that location and check the cycle timing and making sure that the main folks that need to get through that system is given the appropriate green lights in that duration of green time. So we definitely taking this down, and we'll take it back to our team and take a look at it immediately. That's something that we want to make sure that our signals are operating as expected.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
All right. Director Faria.
Thank you. The first question is I wanted to follow up on the timing of the signal lights in Los Banos. We asked about last month.
Yeah, I think it was last month. Yes, we did note that, and we are initiating an investigation in that area. Let's see. Yes, we're going to be working with the city on that, but yes, the main thing was that we're going to initiate a investigation, but the synchronizing project is led by the city, right? So we're going to be coordinating with the city on this to make sure we're on the same page.
Very good. And then the second question, the fast charging stations. Los Banos has probably the closest relationship with the Bay Area of any valley town, especially Central Valley. And we have quite a few. We're seeing more electric cars in Los Banos. We have a lot of commuters. Probably 2/3 of our workforce goes over the hill. And we also see the Bay Area itself is going electric in a big way. Shoot Yandell Truckaway, when my dad used to drive for them, and they've gone, their entire fleet is going electric, an entire major truck fleet. And so I'm curious, you're mentioning those fast chargers in the South Valley, and what are our plans up around Central Valley?
Yeah, so we're pretty preliminary in the process. What we've been trying to do, especially from a headquarters perspective, is work with the local utilities and partner and see how we can encourage some installation in partnership with local agencies. But We've got to continue those discussions. I think they've kind of stalled on our end. So we're going to be looking to coordinate with our local partners on that. But we do have a little bit of staff change in headquarters for our ZEV program, which is a little bit of a hiccup. But we're very, very much committed to making sure we have EV charging features in our area of District 10. And you bring up a good point about folks commuting through Pacheco Pass into the Bay Area. We realize that's a high priority corridor, and we want to make sure we have charging facilities in that area. So stay tuned. We'll hopefully have more information on that. So
thank you very much.
Hey, Director Perea, you have a question?
Yes. Yeah, for Mauricio. Mauricio, whose position did you take at District 10?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Director? Okay. So before I came on board permanently, we had a couple of acting staff. Charlie Modrell, I'm not sure if she was able to attend one of these meetings, and Pam Marquez was acting prior to that. So I'm replacing. That's the position the person that I'm replacing. The last acting was Charlie Modrell.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Director Serrato.
Thank you, Chair Hoag. Thank you, gentlemen, for all your work, and just following up on two issues I raised last time. Marlon was really good and conscientious about talking about them. Just the two would be the 13th Street one-way in Merced. There's a lot of talk about that. There's just a lot of frustration in the community with that. So if I know you guys are looking into it, wanted to thank you for that. And then two, the issue of the encampments. So again, you guys addressed it today. So your continued partnership is valued. Again, a huge point of concern for our community. And just, potentially some out-of-box ideas. I know some cities, for example, have reimbursement agreements where they can maybe do some of the work themselves and then apply to the state for reimbursement. I mean, that's an option I think would be open to exploring as well. We did about less than 2 weeks ago, we had a big volunteer cleanup, and actually we had a bunch of volunteers who spent about an hour on the current encampment at 13th and G. And we took, in about an hour, we took, I don't know, a dozen plus truckloads of trash out of there. Kind of just barely made a dent. We ended up with over 13 tons for the whole day. But just seeing that and kind of learning what we learned from that, an encampment like that's going to require weekly, if not more, trash service to make sure, it maintains a certain level of cleanliness. So just putting that on everybody's radar as well too. I think that's the level of service that they're going to need is at least tantamount to what the house receives, or probably more. So that weekly service is, and there's a creative way to maybe do this better. We're open to partnership. We're open to work with you guys, whatever you think.
Thank you. This is Dennis. I just want to respond to that. Appreciate the innovative ideas. Definitely we're welcome, and we'll definitely like to partner with whoever wants to do, whether it's reimbursement or other opportunities. I do have a District 10 task force. I got one person assigned to that, but has a larger team that they work with within Caltrans, including headquarters. So I will definitely reach out to you, Director Serrato, if that's okay, and we could look for opportunities, unless you have somebody else you want us to contact.
No, if you got somebody, I can either call them, or our city manager's working on it as well. She had a number of ideas too about that as well. So if I could put, if you have somebody I could put in touch with our city manager, that'd be a great start, I think.
Okay, I will definitely reach out to you and give you the name and the contact information.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Dennis. Appreciate you.
And Mayor Serrato, I just want to add, just to make sure you're aware, we are initiating an investigation with our traffic operations unit for your concern on 13th Street. So just want to let you know.
Yeah, no, thank you. Well, we appreciate that too. I know you were good about responding to it. So thanks again. Appreciate you guys. Thanks.
Hey, Director Silvera.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. Again, I just want to follow up on some of the issues in the Santa Nella area. that right-hand turn lane that goes down Centinela Boulevard. That's a access point for most of the folks in the mobile home park there for their kids. I know school's not really in session, but there's talk about them going back in session. So just want to keep that on your radar. And then, Director, you said that there's a newsletter. I don't get that newsletter. I don't know if I fell off of a list somewhere or what, but I'm not familiar with that newsletter. And I would be curious as to exactly who you send that to, and MCAG staff, Stacy, if they send it to you, and make sure you send it out to me as its own piece of, I guess, its own email, its own a standalone. And I don't know, maybe if I'm just not seeing it because it's part of something larger.
Yeah, let me clarify, Director Silvera, this is Dennis again. I must have misspoken or misstated. It was the quarterly letters that I sent out to the governing board with all the status of these projects and investigations and so forth. And that was sent out yesterday. Again, I apologize, it was a late sending that out. And I know that Stacy did send it out to the rest of the board members. Not sure if you received it or not. It wasn't a newsletter. It was actually a quarterly letter from me as the director, giving you a status of all these specific work that we're doing in your county.
And Director Silvera, this is Stacy. Note taken on wanting it as a separate email. I usually wait till I have 2 or 3 things to send so that I'm not sending a bunch of stuff to your email. It did come through yesterday with my meeting reminder. So I'll make a point now when I get those from Dennis and his team to just send them in the subject line Caltrans report so that they're more easily identifiable.
Perfect. Thank you, Stacy, because I already knew I was coming to the meeting, so I didn't look at the meeting reminder. So anyways, no, and then the other thing I'll just share with you gentlemen is I was just in the Centinela area yesterday, and it just, I don't know. I think it's maybe you guys take a look at that whole section from 152, starting at 152 and heading northbound on Highway 33. There's a super lot of truck traffic through there. And it seems like we got to have a better idea, because it seems otherwise we're replacing pavement in that area. It seems like almost every couple of years. I know that they've done complete overlays in there. Then it seems like 2 years later, they're coming back and doing dig outs and replacing the pathways where the tires travel, if you will. But it just, I know it's heavy truck. It's a truck stop town. There's a lot of truck traffic in there. It just seems like maybe it would behoove us to come up with a better system, because the current one, it seems like we're just keep putting good money after bad, and it doesn't seem to be holding up. So again, that's just more of a observation and food for thought. But I know that since I've been elected as the District 5 supervisor, there's been work done on Highway 33 from 152, and driving down it yesterday, a mere two years and 2 months later, it doesn't seem like it seems like that thing would have been done 10 years ago. So it just, again, think about, like, is there alternatives to what they're doing now? Because it really doesn't seem to be working. But thank you for your time.
Duly noted, Director Silvera, and we'll definitely go back to my asset management team to see what else we could do there to have better alternatives to the pavement rehab that we do in that section of the roadway, so it can last as expected for the people that's traveling up and down that corridor.
And if I may add on, Dennis, Supervisor, we, and regarding Centinela, we did take that back to our traffic operations team as well. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but we will be investigating that also. The main concern we have at the moment is schools not fully back in session. And so it's really tough for us to analyze the facility under normal operating conditions. So that's kind of our hesitation at the moment, but we're trying to figure out ways that we can address the situation. It's duly noted, and we appreciate you bringing it up to us. And again, regarding the pavement, we definitely want to take a look at that north on 33 as well, and 152. But we are, as sustainability, as our headquarters sustainability is doing, and headquarters maintenance, looking at ways to really improve or lengthen the life cycle of our pavement. We know that that's something that will help us out in terms of our maintenance dollars. And hopefully we'll have some good products coming out, but I think that's something that we're actively researching. And there has been some recent news about that with the recycled pavement that we've been doing. And so we're making progress, but your concerns are well noted, and we're going to continue to work on that aspect. So appreciate it, Supervisor. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no other questions from the board, thank you, Caltrans, for your report. We are going to move on to item 9B, which is the transportation planning and Measure V updates from Matt Fell.
Madam Chair, I see one more hand raised. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I see it now.
Director Faria.
Sorry.
Mr. Silvera mentioned the road out there. Are agricultural trucks still allowed heavier loads than regular freight trucks?
So this is Dennis. I'm not sure exactly which one you're referring to as far as currently allowed for heavy trucks. Everyone, go ahead.
Big rigs traditionally. I seem to recall in my mind big rigs, and it's been a long time. I haven't been involved in the trucking business a long time, but I was just curious because it used to be 76,800 was total weight on full truck and trailer, and then I think it was like 85 or more was allowed for agricultural trucks. And I'm wondering if that higher number is still allowed for agricultural trucks.
I haven't heard of any other exceptions to those laws today with the trucks that are allowed on our system. I know at one time, due to the COVID and trying to get some of these larger, like you said, agriculture trucks with the heavier loads were as an exception through the USDOT. But I haven't heard anything else beyond that. So what's allowed on 33, they still have to follow the rules that in California, and that's one of the things that we have to have our partners, the CHP, to help us to enforce through the truck weigh stations throughout our district or in California.
Okay, thank you. Because I know when in tomato season, these roads around here take quite a beating, and so if there's a way, as Mr. Silvera had said, to maybe find a way to make those roads hold up better, that would be great to see. Thanks.
Understood.
Okay, are there no more questions? Then I'm going to move to item 9B, which is the transportation planning and Measure V update from Matt Fell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Directors, just have a couple quick items. So in case you hadn't heard, the high-speed rail did release an updated draft business plan that they were going to release in 2020, and then there were some delays. That's out. It does continue to emphasize the Merced, Fresno, Bakersfield initial operating segment. So that's out there. Secondly is that at the end of the last year, there was a bill passed with some relief funds, HR 133, and about $900 million of transportation funds will be coming to California. The state decides what to do with those. And, to date, the talk, as I understand it, is using some of the existing formulas, which is a split between the state and then passing on funds to local and regional agencies. And that's something that regional agencies such as ourselves were advocating for, that money to be passed down to local agencies so they can put that money to work expeditiously. So we're looking forward to seeing what California is going to be doing with that money, hopefully passing on a good chunk of it. An effort is underway in San Joaquin Valley, emphasizing Highway 99. Director Dennis Agar was mentioning the summit, the visioning summit and the efforts there, and then also There is work underway to just emphasize that Highway 99 has had a lot of work done, but there are segments that still are not finished. And those are, of course, in Merced, Madera, and Tulare counties, where there are still 4-lane segments. So that's still in its initial stages, and we will keep you posted on that. And then lastly, we are preparing the draft budget for the next fiscal year. So we'll bring that as an information item in March, and it's due to Caltrans. And then we'll bring it back for your consideration in April. And that's the budget for the transportation planning functions. If you had any questions on any of those things or anything else in transportation planning or Measure B, I could take those.
Okay, seeing none, let's move to item 9C, which is regional early action planning funding. And again, Matt, this is for you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and directors. This is a discussion item. We're presenting some information and seeking any feedback or comments or direction that you might have. And we did have a good discussion from both the Citizens Advisory Committee and the Technical Review Board, which I will tell you about momentarily. First, I'm just going to go ahead and share the screen with the staff report, which is right there. For new members and all board members, this is a new program that the state passed a while back that basically was $250 million for 2 programs. One of them was called LEAP, Local Early Action Planning, was funding directly to the cities and counties for housing planning. And the other one is REAP, about the same amount going to regional entities, one of which is a San Joaquin Valley-wide entity, 3 elected officials from, or 3 representatives, I should say, from each of the 8 counties. And so that work group has been meeting and has already done a few things, deciding that Fresno COG would be the fiscal agent and submitted some applications for some of the funding. And actually has provided direction on all 3 chunks of funding, $18 million valley-wide, and about $900,000 of that will come to MCAG for further distribution. And so what we've done is we've been communicating with the other agencies in the Valley and just comparing notes and ideas and so forth. And I want to jump down to, so one of the purposes that this money can be used for is the regional housing needs assessment, and that is something that staff is proposing. And we had in here an amount, although we may come back with a somewhat different amount there. But basically, regional housing needs assessment is something that MCAG must do. It's mandated by the state. And in the past, we didn't get funds from the state to do it. So we had to we had to have a modest effort when we do this. It's about every 8 years. So this time there is funds to do it. So we're proposing, having those funds to do this housing needs assessment, which is the process that results in those housing allocations that you have to address in your housing elements. So this is a very important effort. Then there were 3 other areas that are being looked at agencies. So one of them is allocations by formula to jurisdictions. And so under number 2, I put, just as an example, if all of the remaining funds, if $200,000 was taken for the regional housing needs assessment preparation, and all of the remaining funds were distributed by population formula basis, that's what that would look like. And then in number 3 is what San Joaquin COG is doing. And so they have an approach at which they're going to be looking at it on a regional basis, the entire amount, and possibly developing a regional housing trust fund, doing things to streamline development, developing a regional project pipeline, and supporting jurisdictions with COVID-19 impacts. And then Fresno COG is also doing a regional approach, but they're doing it via a grant program, where they have released an application out to the jurisdictions, and the jurisdictions submit their projects, what they would do with the money. And then the COG will award those grants back out to their jurisdictions. So that was kind of the initial thoughts. And then, as I mentioned, there was some good discussion at the advisory committees, and the technical review board wanted to do a little bit deeper dive into a piece of this for some regional work. So perhaps there might be some ways to look at homelessness planning support. That is an eligible expense under this program. And so I'm going to be working with the TRB members to refine a concept to bring back for discussion. But we're definitely interested in any thoughts that the board might have or direction that you would like to add to that. So basically, we'll be coming back with something a little more refined than this. So I would expect that we'll still have a proposal for RENA, but the amount might be different. There might be a regional consensus program of some sort of formula distribution. So that's kind of a preview of what I think might be coming back to you at a future date. And if you have any questions or suggestions, I could take those now.
Okay, Director Perea.
There we go.
No
Matt,
question.
I have a question. What would be the reasoning for or justification for the 193,000 for MCAG? What is there a responsibility that you're going to do in addition to the jurisdictions?
Sorry.
Yeah, so that one is the preparation of the regional housing needs assessment, which is an MCAG function. And a piece of that would be for MCAG's administrative costs in doing things under this. So, but that would be a relatively small piece. And then we took a look at what other agencies have been paying for their RENA processes lately. And so I did kind of an estimate of what that might be. And it's possible that it could be less, especially if there's interest in other regional priorities. But basically, this is a report, a very detailed report where HCD gives us a countywide number of what they say the housing needs are. And then we have to divvy that up by the 7 jurisdictions by income category. And you may have heard that the numbers that they're giving out to everybody throughout the state are higher than what they were last time. So for example, LA's gotten a lot of attention in the news because their number was at least double of what they were expecting. Smaller areas, it looks like it's been 30 to 50% higher than what the last RENA number was 8 years ago. But it could end up being a challenging process. So that's basically what that money is for, is that process. And again, when we come back, it might be a smaller number that we would be proposing.
Okay. The other comment I'd make, and of course, hopefully all the folks from the cities have had a chance to talk to their staff about this, but what kind of makes the most sense to me is kind of a regional approach. And so, because we're not divvying up the money today, but as far as direction to staff, I guess is what you're looking for. It seems like, there may be a cost savings in doing a regional approach versus each jurisdiction doing their own. And so, that kind of be the way I would lean. However, if the cities, feel that they need the money and want the money, I'm okay with that. I just think that we've been trying to address homeless and housing kind of more regionally under the direction of Assemblyman Gray, and it seems like everybody's coming together and it's working well. So that's just my 2 cents, but I'll listen to what the others have to say.
Okay, and the next hand up was Director Pedroso.
Thank you. Matt, can you explain 3A, please? I'm not understanding the contributing to the fund is not an eligible use. I don't get that.
Sure. This money can't be used to build housing, basically. So it could establish a housing trust fund and the parameters of that, but the money could not actually go to build a housing project or housing.
But it would still be able, it would still be a trust fund to where it still is a regional approach to
Right.
look at the areas and kind of help out and that type of stuff.
Right. And that was something that the city managers and TRB members did also discuss wanting to look into that a little bit more. So, let's just say it costs 50 or 100 grand to, or that seed money could help establish a housing trust fund. That would be a eligible expense and could be seen as a useful thing. And then the money that would actually go to building projects, would have to come from other sources.
Okay, Director Silvera. You're on mute, Scott.
Hold on.
There you go.
Good now. Thank you. Sorry. Yeah, Matt, walk me through that. Back to the whole the 100 and something thousand that MCAG needs to kind of undertake their efforts. I don't dispute that, but when you tell me that the state kind of gives you the numbers already, it costs us $193,000 to understand the state's numbers. Is that what I'm hearing? What do I get for that 193,000? I get that it looks like about 27,000 of it is staff time. The rest is professional services time. If they're already giving us the number, does the money go to trying to decide whether they're telling us a truthful number or not?
No, it's to produce a very long and detailed report. The most important outcome of that report is that there will be a table. So what they give us is a countywide number, and then that has to be broken down into 7 pieces, which are the housing needs for each jurisdiction by income category. And then each jurisdiction has to update their housing element to identify where they have land zoned to accommodate all of that housing need. And so the process of divvying that up by jurisdiction can get complicated. And then also the second most important part of that is that they require a lot of documentation to demonstrate a variety of things. So there has to be you have to demonstrate that you've done an analysis of a whole bunch of parameters. It's all spelled out. We can provide more information on that, but
no, that makes more sense to me there. And then, so I guess the next question I have is it written in law somewhere that when you talk about the 7 jurisdictions, does it behoove us to look at ourselves as one jurisdiction, so that? And I get it that it's a bigger, larger question, but if you're the city of Los Banos or you're the city of Atwater or whatever, instead of reinventing the wheel and having to look at these at 7 at every category, income level, and in 7 different places, could you look at it as a county-wide and where everybody uses that number? Is that possible, or is that not they don't allow for that?
Well, yes. I mean, and there's a couple different things. So the RENA report itself is meant to be that. It is meant to be a regional look at how the housing needs might be accommodated in a region instead of on a city by city or jurisdiction by jurisdiction basis. And then also, I don't know if you were referring to a housing element, but it is also possible to do a regional housing element. Some other regions have done that. And I wasn't necessarily, proposing that or saying that was something that we would propose, but it has been done in other areas to do a regional
housing element. I look at them as
Fresno
am I off bases, Matt, in thinking that like the housing element and RENA are kind of like similar things?
Well, sort of RENA feeds into housing element, but a housing element is much more. I mean, it's statutorily required. It's, you know, it's part of the fabric of, you know, a jurisdictional development, zoning, planning, all those sorts of things. So it's, you know, the housing elements where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, except in housing.
Okay, perfect.
And
No,
the RENA is
I
kind of
guess,
a step.
yeah, and so I guess, yeah, I'd like to explore some options that
Yeah.
shows that we're doing a regional approach so that you don't have 7 jurisdictions doing the same thing, you know, and reinventing the wheel 7 times, and just doing it, looking at it and doing it all one. But that's just kind of my initial thoughts on it. Thank you.
Okay, Director Serrato.
Thank you, April. No, I share a lot of the similar thoughts. I mean, from a city perspective as well, I think it makes a lot more sense to develop a regional approach. There's a lot of potential there in terms of a lot of things we can do. I think to really take our homeless and housing efforts to the next level. And it's important. I think the regional approach in so many ways is, you know, because everybody, especially with the homeless services area, everybody does something different, right? The county specializes in certain things. The city's got different things they're good at, and really to come together and just really, you know, cement that regional approach, I think, you know, would be a nice thing here. So the more we cooperate, the more we work together, the better.
Okay, are you done?
I got one more thing, if I
Well-
could. Just to follow up on it, when you just look at the breakdown of the number, Mayor, I mean, look, what's Dos Palace going to do with $13,500? Like, you know what I mean? And so it only makes sense to me that, like, you know, I'm looking around for Dos Palace and Gustine. You know, you start to get a little bit higher when you get to the Livingston section, but you know, Dos Palace and Gustine together probably can't really get a real efficient project done for $25,000. So that's kind of where I was going with it. Thank you.
No, I agree. What are they going to do? Hire a 0.13 FTE to draw a plan up for, you know, it doesn't make a lot of sense with that money. It just doesn't really go anywhere.
Okay, Director McDaniel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'm on definitely the same page as that. I think the regional approach, everybody will benefit from each other's arena numbers. And I know some folks are a little farther advanced on this. I think the city of Atwater has really taken an approach, not so much voluntarily. I think the state kind of forced them into doing it, but they've already put a lot of stuff forward on this. And I think if we do it as a regional, we're all going to benefit together and continue to move forward on it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, and lastly, Director Faria.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree. It doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't make any sense to hire, because you need a consultant to do these things. It doesn't make any sense to hire 7 consultants for all different jurisdictions. So we have 1 consultant and with our staff, all working a regional approach, I think is the right way to go. And then now this is just information today. This is going to be discussed at TRB, the next TRB meeting as well.
It will be discussed with the TRB. Yes, that was, they suggested several ideas, and some are similar to what you were mentioning here, and great interest in looking at what possibilities there are to coordinate regionally. And so it might, I'm thinking about the structure of continuing that discussion. You know, I'm not sure the next TRB meeting is the best place for that next discussion, but within the next month or so, at least 1 or 2 meetings to talk about those ideas and flesh out a concept to come back before you. You know, it's absolutely very reliant on the TRB member input. We're not housing experts. You know, maybe I should have thrown that disclaimer out, you know, at the very beginning. And this really impacts the local jurisdictions, you know. So we're going to be very reliant on that advice and perspective from your staff to help shape what this would look like.
Oh, but the state is wanting you guys to be the experts at this.
So thank you. That's what I wanted to hear, that we're the CEOs, essentially the TRB, and then we'll be communicating with our city managers and our staff to get all our wishes into that area. But once again, the regional approach is the only one that makes any sense particularly when you look at the numbers. So thank you very much, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Matt before we move on? Okay, seeing none. Let's move on to thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Moving on to the Transit Joint Powers Authority for Merced County agenda. Item 10 are informational items. Do any of the directors have any questions for staff on, and I think there's only one item, the quarterly report on Transit Joint Powers Authority for Merced County board approved contracts, which is on page 225. Does anybody have any questions? Seeing none, let's move to the consent calendar. There are no consent items under the consent calendar, so we will move on to item 12, and these are action items. Item 12A is a request to accept Transit's audited financials for the year ending June 30th, 2020. And NAV has the floor for that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Everybody grab a cup of coffee because this is going to be a long one. I'm just joking. I'm just going to go real quick through this. Reason why I'm bringing up the operations, revenues, and expenditures on the next slide, it'll make sense. Our operating revenues are lower because of the pandemic. We stopped charging fares starting in late March, and our operation costs also decreased because we reduced service, and also our previous operator, we charge them liquidated damages, so our expenses are lower. But the reason why I'm talking about this is we did have a non-compliance financial statement in our financials, and that's due to our fare box ratio. The fare box ratio is basically the total operating cost divided by what we receive in fare box. For the urban area, we had to maintain a 15% ratio. For rural, we have to maintain a 10% ratio. So we did not meet that this year. But however, SB 90 basically it stops any imposing fees on the transit agencies if they don't meet the fare box requirement for 1920 and 2021. So even though there's a finding and we didn't meet the fare box ratio, the state basically says it's okay because of the pandemic. Other than that, financial statements are good, and everything is clean. So if anybody has any questions, I'm here to answer. Nice hat, Scott.
Mary Michael, are there any questions from the public?
No, Madam Chair, I see no hands raised.
Okay. If there are no other questions, can I have a motion?
I see Director.
Oh, sorry.
Hand up.
All right, Director Silvera, what was your question?
No question, Madam Chair. I would like to make a motion to approve the audited financials for, let me read it here. I got it on the wrong page. Accept the TJP AMC audited financial statements for the year ending June 30th, 2020 with NAB's explanation of the one finding that they had.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. So Joy, can you please take roll?
I'm sorry, can we please repeat who made the second motion?
Pedroso seconded.
Do we need public comment?
We did that already.
Okay, thank you. I'll take roll. Director Aguilar? Director Kale?
Yes.
Director Espinoza?
Aye.
Director Faria,
Yes.
Director McDaniel,
Daniel, I.
Director Nagy, I'm sorry, Director Nagy, Director Pereira,
Yes.
Director Pedroso, Director Serrato,
Aye.
Director
Yes.
Silvera,
Aye. And
Director
I heard
Hope.
Director say aye.
Aye.
Wonderful. So an aye from Director Nagy.
I think he's frozen now, but I heard him say aye.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously.
Oh, man. Okay. We're moving on to item 13, which is a discussion item. We have one. Item 13A is a transit update from Christine Chavez. Christine?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, directors. I'll be brief and just letting you know that our ridership did see a slight decline in January, mostly related to the shelter or the stay-at-home order issued in California and our reduced service. We have since resumed full service and we are preparing to reinstate fare collection. So we hope to have that later this month. And I also wanted to indicate that we will be, we're starting a Mask Up campaign where we'll be partnering with some of the Valley Transit agencies and doing some videos and potentially some commercials about masking up. So if any of you are interested, please let me know and we can get you recorded and on video. That's all I have.
Are there any questions from the board? Okey doke, seeing none, we're moving to the Merced County Regional Waste Management Authority agenda, which is item 14, our informational items only. Do any of the directors have any questions for staff on these items? And these items are A, 2021 Merced County Regional Waste Management Calendar, B, Solid Waste Association of North America, California Legislative Task Force, and C, Quarterly Report on Merced County Waste or Regional Waste Management Authority Board Approved Contracts. Is there more? No.
No, Madam Chair, you got it.
Anyone have any questions?
Madam Chair, I do.
Okay.
This is Silvera. It's more of an ask. Can Eric, can you send out specifically just the page that I saw in here that has lists all of the dates for the community cleanup events? Send that out as its own separate. I don't necessarily need it in the calendar form, but just I think I saw somewhere like a page that listed them all. If you could send that out to all of us, I would do my part in making sure that I get all of the ones that are for at least in my district, help to get them out on my social media, because I think it's a huge problem that we have, especially with all the ones that were canceled last year. We need to make sure that we're publicizing them because people are dumping crap everywhere and it's getting out of hand.
Yes, absolutely, Director Silvera. That is included for the board on item 17A, and I will definitely make sure that we get that out to you.
Thank you.
Okay, I see Director McDaniel and then Perea.
Yes, Madam Chair. I know that's an item that's already listed on here, but I want to let you know, Scott, that the county is going to be sponsoring social media posts and paying for posts, so it gets out to each of those communities. I think 10 days prior, and they're going to run like a 10-day ad leading into each one.
Okay, and Director Perea?
Yes, and then also the county is going to work with the water sewer districts and all the outlying communities and the school districts and send in a flyer to each of them for the communities as well. And they're supposed to CC us supervisors on that list.
Okay, and Director Serrato.
All you county guys are welcome to come to our city cleanups anytime. So I'm welcome to, I'll give you, Darren, Scott, I'll give you guys the dates if you like. April 3rd, Joe Hurt Park. We'll see you there.
April 1st?
3rd. Thanks.
Okay, if there's no more questions, we're going to move to consent calendar. There are no consent items under this. So we're moving on to item 16, action items. Item 16 are action items. These items will be presented one at a time by staff, and public comment will be available during the consideration of each item. So item 16A is a request to authorize contracts for the transportation or transport and processing of recyclable materials, and that's with Eric's presentation. Go ahead, Eric.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This presentation will be given by Kyle Loretto. Kyle?
Excuse me, just a moment. Sorry about this, just a moment. Yes, good afternoon and thank you, Madam Chair. Today's action is a recommendation to enter into a 5-year agreement for the transportation and processing of recycled materials from the Highway 59 landfill. To provide you with some background on how we came to this recommendation, in 2015, the RWA entered into an agreement for these services with Republic Services with a contract expiration of September 2020. In March of 2018, the China sword policy came into effect. China at the time was purchasing nearly 3/4 of the world's recyclables. China's new policy ended that practice, forcing countries around the world to change how recycling material is handled. At the time, 70% of the US material was being purchased by China, and the buyers had to find new places to get rid of their recycled materials. The loss of this market caused some municipalities in parts of the US to shut down recycling programs completely. Many recycling companies went out of business because they were unable to find buyers for their material. To survive, recyclers had to invest millions in new equipment and staff. And in 2019, Republic Services, like many of the other recyclers, began asking their partners for rate increases to make up for lost revenue and increased expenses. They approached the RWA with this request. The RWA asked consultants HF&H to review the request, and Rob Hilton held a workshop for the board and recommended denial of the increase. The board chose not to renegotiate its contract at that time with Republic Services. In June of 2020, as the recycling contract was nearing termination, the governing board directed staff to issue a letter to Republic Services asking to extend the agreement with no changes for an additional 2 years. Republic returned with an offer of a 2-year extension with the rate increase that they had requested the previous year. After many meetings with jurisdiction staff and negotiations with Republic Services, we were unable to come to an acceptable agreement with them. In September of 2020, the board authorized RWA to enter into month-to-month contracts for transportation and processing of recyclable materials when the Republic Services contract expired. These month-to-month contracts were not to exceed $115 per ton and extended for no more than 12 months. During this time, participating jurisdictions would be charged about $18 a ton, with the RWA picking up the difference in the cost. $825,000 of RWA funds were allocated for this. In October, the RWA released an RFP for this transportation and processing services or recyclable services material at Highway 59 landfill. We received 4 responses to this RFP. Through December and over the holidays, our evaluation team, which was made up of jurisdiction representatives, myself, and an industry representative from Kings County, reviewed all of the evaluations. We met in January, and we chose to interview 2 of the proposers. Following the interviews, evaluation forms were submitted by the evaluators, and based on the scores, negotiations began with Cagley Environmental, Cedar Avenue Recycling Transfer Station, also known as CARTS. The contract's terms listed in the staff report includes a $25 per ton for transportation of material, $39.95 per ton for the processing of that material, and CARTS will also return all residual material to RWA at a rate of $31.57. These costs will be subject to annual CPI and a fuel rate increase. The contract will begin July 1st of 2021. As with the previous contract, the complete cost for these services will be passed through to the participating jurisdictions. Each jurisdiction will be charged a total of $64.95 per ton for transportation and processing of material that is brought into Highway 59. On July 1st, RWA will no longer be responsible for any portions of these costs. We recommend that the board authorize the executive director to enter into this contract for 5 years with 5 one-year extensions not to exceed 10 years. That is the end of my presentation. Erica, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Chair McDaniel?
It's not chair, it's director.
Oh, director, sorry. Sorry. It's been a long meeting.
If nobody else has their hand raised or has any comments, I'd like to make a motion to accept this and to enter into the contract with Caglia Environment.
Second, Silvera.
Oh, sorry. I was just sitting here. Can we get a roll call?
Madam Chair, I just want to make sure we check for public comment first.
Oh, yep. Comment first. Comments. Are there any?
I see no hands raised.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, so we have the motion, so now we need the vote.
Director Kale,
Yes.
Director Espinoza,
Yes.
Director Faria,
Yes.
Director McDaniel,
McDaniel, aye.
Director Nagy, Director Pereira,
Yes.
Director Pedroso,
Aye.
Director Serrato,
Yes.
Director Silvera,
Aye, and just want to thank Eric and the staff for really getting a rate that looks a lot more respectable than what we were anticipating.
Thank you for that.
Director Hoag,
Yes.
motion carries unanimously.
Okay, so we're moving on to item 16B is a request to authorize the flow control policy. And we'll go back to Eric on
Thank
this.
you. Thank you, Madam Chair, Board. Item 16B is an action item, comes before you to recommend that the board approve and adopt a resolution establishing a flow control policy for the authority. On August 20th, 2020, the board directed staff to draft a policy to relax the flow control requirement for diverted materials, not municipal solid waste, not trash, but for recycling and plant or green waste materials for all jurisdictions. And to bring this back to the board for a adoption and or discussion and adoption at a future meeting. This is that meeting today. Pursuant to the board's direction, staff has developed a policy document that can be found in your packet on pages 330 and 331 that establishes by which all member agencies may seek an alternative arrangements for their recycling and plant material, not their municipal solid waste or trash material. That concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, does anyone have any questions? Are there any questions from the public?
I see no hands raised, Madam Chair.
Okay, is there a motion then? There's no motion.
Faria, I'll make the motion.
Okay.
To authorize the flow control policy.
All right, is there a second?
Silvera, second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. So do we need to have a roll call vote? Let's have a roll call vote.
Thank you. Director Kale,
Yes.
Director Espinoza,
Yes.
Director Faria,
Yes.
Director McDaniel,
For all those policy wonks, I'm surprised nobody jumped up on that one. Aye.
Director Nagy,
Aye.
Director Pereira,
Yes.
Director Pedroso,
Aye.
Director Serrato,
Yes.
Director Silvera,
Aye.
Director Hogue.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, and now we're going to move to item 16C, a request to accept the audited financials for the year ending June 30th, 2020. So here we have Nav again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think everybody's getting tired of hearing me talking, so I'll keep this brief again. Just to compare from last year to this year's revenues, we did actually have a good year for regional waste. We out earned our expenditures by $6.2 million. But our expenditures, it did increase by almost $2 million. And that's due to professional services and also amortization and depreciation of equipment. One of the things we were able to do in this fiscal year is pay down our long-term debt. Our refinance bond, we paid it down. Beginning of the year, we're at 15 million. Now we're down to $13.7 million. That concludes my presentation. Does anybody have any questions?
Well, are there any questions from the directors? And are there any questions from the public?
I do have my hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking at Mary Michael. Okay, Director.
My question is, so we're putting a dent in the bond, which is really nice. So is that mostly because of the a lot of the stuff we're accepting from the Bay Area?
In the increase, it's a little bit of both. It's also out of county tonnage. Also, there's an increase in county tonnage as well. Mostly it was out of county, but there was a little increase in county tonnage as well.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I put that out there so we understand when we're bringing that in from Santa Clara County and stuff that it's actually paying off our bond for us. Thanks.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay, Mary Michael, are there any questions from the public?
I do not see any hands raised.
All right, so is there a motion to accept the audited financials for the year ending? Oh, Scotty.
I'm making the motion to
Oh,
accept the audited financials. Thank you, Madam Chair. I was trying to help you along.
I'll second that.
You just keep looking at hands now. Okay, all right.
I'll second it.
Okay. Joy, can you please take a roll call?
Director Kale,
Yes.
Director Espinoza,
Yes.
Director Faria,
Yes.
Director McDaniel,
Aye.
Director Nagy, Director Pereira,
Yes.
Director Pedroso,
Aye.
Director Serrato,
Yes.
Director Silvera,
Aye.
Director Hogue,
Yes.
and I'm sorry, I'll try one more time. Director Nagy,
I think I'm looking at it, his screen was frozen again. And so I think he got back on right now.
Director Nagy,
Yeah, he said he's having a tough time with his microphone too.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, we are moving on to item 16D, which is a proposed agenda item for consideration related to illegal dumping. And this is something that Stacy is going to talk about, so I'll turn it over to her.
Madam Chair, in the interest of time, I know we're running a little late for what we were wanting to achieve with our continued discussion for the landfill gas to energy project workshop. If Director McDaniel would agree, as this item was put on for at his request, I could move this item to next month's agenda to provide ample time for discussion.
Thank you, Stacy. I think it was Director Pedroso and myself both. And with the interest of time, yeah, we can move it to our next meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have to do a vote for that? No? Okay, so let's move on then to item 17, our discussion items, which will be presented one at a time by staff to allow directors to ask questions or provide staff directions as appropriate. So item 17A is the Merced County Regional Waste Management Authority monthly update. Do I read all of those?
No. That's quite all right. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm only going to touch on a couple things. And first, I want to apologize to Madam Chair and Dos Palos. On page 372 of the monthly report for April 10th, it says in your staff report that event is going to be Los Banos and La Grande. In reality, it is not Los Banos, it is the city of Dos Palos. So I have sent you all an email. You have that fixed now, but just a correction there. The only other thing I'll note is that the Assembly Bill 332 deals with treated wood waste. It is a fixed bill, takes 2/3 of the vote of the House to pass that. And the authority is working right now on a waiver for treated wood waste. And so we hope to have that application for both sites in this week. I'd be happy to talk about anything that's on that monthly item before we get into the landfill gas energy project.
Okay, I see Director Pedroso has a question.
Yeah, I didn't catch the dates that you said on there that were changed.
Yes, so I've sent you an email and that change is in the email that I sent you. But on page 372, for the date of April 10, 2021, it shows that the community cleanup will happen in Los Banos. That should be Dos Palos.
Okay. If there are no other items or other questions, let's move to B, the landfill gas to energy project workshop number 2, which is Eric. Go ahead.
Excellent. Thank you. Mary Michael, just a heads up that Peter Brinsby is on a phone number, area code 618-681-4960. If you could add him to presenter mode, that would be excellent.
Yes, he's unmuted.
Thank you. So welcome everyone. And for the team that has been here waiting on this call, thank you for your time here today. And for the board, I just want to remind you folks that this is your opportunity to ask any questions. We have these individuals here at your disposal, so ask away any questions that you might have. Of course, we had the workshop 1. This is workshop 2. I do want to talk about the team. So the team, UC Merced is our project partner. Since 2016, that has been the group that we have been working hard with. UC Merced will present their presentation on the last workshop. Ascent Environmental is a part of our team. They're the ones that process the mitigated negative declaration that will come to this board. So they did the CEQA. K&N Public Finance is our financial advisor. They will be presenting at a later time. And then Tetra Tech BAS is the project engineer who will be presenting today. MozTech Power is the construction manager at risk. They are the successful bidder for phase 1. So a recap of the workshop. Workshop 1 was held at a special meeting on February 10. We did a summary of activities, project benefits, discussed the memorandum of understanding, next steps, and workshop dates. This, if you were unable to participate in the workshop 1, there is a video link for you to reference. Tetra Tech also discussed the phase 1 of the project submittals, budget, schedule, cost containment measures, UC Merced, involvement, and incentive opportunities. Our construction manager at risk, Mostech Power, gave an overview of the project, discussed the Burbank landfill gas to energy project, which they just came off of, and with that same team are proposing to do this project in Merced. ACO Engineering Systems, WA RASIC, and construction price proposal was given to the board at that time. That price proposal is only for construction of the project in phase 2. Workshop 2, which is today, we will be looking at discussing, briefly the purchase power agreement, which is yet to be approved, and we'll come back to this board for approval. We'll do a recap of the workshops. There has been a workshop that has been potentially added that we want to just share with you. Tetra Tech will discuss today the bulk of today's meeting, and it will go over project scope, the pro forma revenues and expenditure, and phase 2 pricing, and then we will conclude. For workshop 3, this is the proposed meeting, which at this time we're hoping to schedule a special board meeting specifically for the financial aspect of this workshop. So at that time, K&N will be then going over project debt issuance, project cash flow with debt, the project economics, the enterprise fund cash flow, and then stress scenarios, which are very important. As you will see, they've done some excellent work determining the what ifs for the authority. And then finally, workshop 4, and I should back up, workshop 3, we're proposing for March 4th. I'm waiting for direction on that. That does appear to be a date that we would move forward with. And then workshop 4, we would be continuing to propose. Workshop 4 would have been our 3rd workshop, but now with the special meeting, we'll look at workshop 4 to be March 18th. At that time, we will have UC Merced give a presentation to you in which they'll discuss energy goals, sustainable practices policy, reduction of reliance on natural gas, and CO2 emissions. Just want to remind folks that these are the areas that are outstanding. We will be coming to this board at a later time if the board so chooses to adopt a final initial study mitigated negative declaration. That is the CEQA document. Approve a purchase power agreement. This is actually the contract that tells you, the purchase agreements with UC Merced. Of course, approve phase 2 construction, which the pricing that we're being discussed in these workshops will divulge. And then also to approve the contract with the construction manager at risk for the phase 2, which is construction. For the purchase power agreement, I'm going to turn this over to Emily. She's going to briefly discuss some of these items here.
Thank you, Eric. Just for all of you on the board, I'm going to go over really quickly some of these bullet points. I'm not going to belabor any of them. We have several consultants on the line to talk to you about the project. If you have questions about anything in the power purchase agreement, please feel free to give me a call offline, and I can go over that with you at that time. But just to summarize, the power purchase agreement is a very complete document. In addition to many other terms, it includes a guarantee that the UC will purchase the electricity that's generated by the turbines by our turbines and any waste heat that they may need. Installation and operations and maintenance will be done by the authority. We will also own the system, and because we own the system, we will be responsible for meter maintenance and testing. Billing will be kind of like any other electric utility, monthly, and expected to be paid within 20 days. Terms and termination, the term is 20 years, initial term. As far as termination, there are very specific events of default described in the agreement. The agreement cannot be terminated easily by either party. If the UC were to terminate, just so you're all aware, there is a termination fee schedule so that the authority would be made whole as far as any outstanding bond amounts that would be due and owing and affected by the UC's withdrawal from the agreement or termination of the agreement.
As far as renewable energy credits, the UC gets those. I believe it's one of the reasons that they rely so heavily on alternative sources of energy. The authority will be entitled to any other rebates and other incentives. Like I mentioned with defaults and remedies, they're very specifically set forth, and there is a termination fee schedule in the event that the UC terminates the agreement prematurely. As far as the facility that will be constructed on the UC campus, our construction manager at risk has developed a plan and has developed plans and specifications for that. And if the UC were to ask for something more attractive or something that would come at a greater cost, we will include a provision in the power purchase agreement that they would be responsible for any payment over and above what is in the plans and specifications. So again, if you would like to discuss any of these terms or the agreement in general, please feel free to give me a call.
Thank you, Emily. So before we go on to project scope at this time, Paul Stout and Caleb Moore of Tetra Tech will be going through their slides. I'm happy to answer any questions on what I've just spoken on. Okay, hearing none, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And Caleb, I'm going to turn it over to you. This is our Tetra Tech BAS project engineer. Caleb?
Thank you, Eric. After last meeting, we were directed to present a little bit more information. Back in 2018, we presented, we had a presentation before the board that talked about the main points of the project, but that was quite some time ago. So we wanted to recover that with the board today and answer any questions that might come out of this to help everybody better understand what the project really includes. We'll cover the project scope, we'll cover the project costs from a technical standpoint or from the operation, maintenance, and construction of this. The financing will be discussed at a later time by KNN, as discussed already earlier by Eric. And we'll also discuss a little bit on some of the risks that we've anticipated and attempted to mitigate for in this process so far. So on this first slide, there's basically three main parts to this project. There's the landfill gas collection and conditioning, the gas transmission, and energy production. Currently at the landfill right now through anaerobic digestion, there is landfill gas emitted or brought landfill gas produced at the landfill that needs to be collected and destroyed. And that's currently being destroyed in a flare system right now. Let me turn my slide here. So the existing conditions, we've kind of got a little diagram up here on the top. So there's the well field. The gas is there's a system in which they pull on the gas, bring it to some amount of conditioning, then basically destroy it at a flare. The proposed improvements are down at the bottom. Schematically, they will still pull the gas, they'll condition it, pull a lot of the nastier elements out of it so that they can clean up and condition the gas suitable for transmission and destruction in a energy system to produce electricity. This is a schematic of what it will look like at the landfill. You have the existing blower, existing condensate tank, flare, and then all the added items are here on the somewhat, actually that would be the southwest, but the north arrows to the left. But this is the basic system which will be added to that. This system is a known system. It's being done in quite a few places, and we've just completed a system just like that with this construction manager at risk firm down in Glendale, California. This is an actual picture of the system. On the left is the well field. They pull the gas right out of the center of the landfill through wells, set throughout the landfill with headers, and then brought to what would be the system here. We have a system of some skids here that will process the gas, pressurize it, and put it in that 7-mile pipeline, which is located here. The pipeline will travel down Highway 59 and across Bellevue into Merced, across 4 jurisdictions: Caltrans, the city, county, and then obviously through UC Merced. That 7-mile pipeline, we've looked at different ways in which we can put it in the road, and we've created a plan. We've looked at it in the environmental document and shared those plans with MCAG to create cost or conceptual cost estimates for that system. At the UC Merced side, the existing condition right now is they do have boiler rooms and a power plant. And the proposed improvements would be to add 3 micro turbines and then an optional 4th at some later time when gas production gets up high enough. The gas we brought in to produce electricity and waste heat would then be transmitted through hot water into the power plant and also sold to UC Merced. This is a conceptual diagram. On the top, we have a kind of a profile or a elevation view of the plant. On the right-hand side is what's existing, and on the left-hand side is what would be constructed to contain the system that we would add to their power plant. Same on the bottom, kind of a different view of the same thing. This is a schematic or a visualization on the right, and on the left would actually be the actual equipment that would produce the electricity. MCAG will actually bring to this and throughout the process, because they've been brought on board, this construction manager at risk process will be a big benefit to the authority, because they will help us value engineer and help be a designing partner, if you will, on this. We will lead the charge on designing and permitting, but they will be all along on the process to help us provide value engineering, meaning cost savings techniques, and different things that would help this along in that process. They will also be privy to the plans and specs all along the way and be able to start their procurement process early, which has some significantly long lead items that will have to be purchased over a year in advance. The energy facilities and stuff like that. The actual construction process was only be about 17 months, although the entire process would be about 18 months, maybe on the outside of 2 years. But they would guarantee through that process with performance of the actual system. They'll guarantee pricing, and they will help manage that construction process to the satisfaction of the authority. The capital construction estimate is on the outside $21,900,000. There are some contingencies in that number because we are dealing with a 5% set of plans and we do not have approvals through all those different agencies that we have, including UC Merced on the exact scope of the building and where that pipeline would lay. Most of the items in which will be installed here are already known. We've already got vendor pricing and commitments from them on holding their pricing, but there are still some design elements that need to be permitted and approved. Engineering and permitting, again, will need to continue. Construction monitoring and quality control services, including environmental monitoring, as prescribed by the CEQA document, will need to take place. So for a total capital project cost of $24,300,000. And with that, I'm going to turn the time over to Paul Stout, who's going to talk a little bit about more of the nuances of some of the risks that were brought up at the last meeting, including gas generation and so on and so forth. So Paul?
Yeah, thanks, Caleb. I assume you still have control of the slides, or somebody does, but I'll run through these. And again, as Caleb said, these projects have been done a number of times. We started this whole process. We've been doing design work on the gas system at the landfill, and as part of that, we've been estimating gas flows. There's a couple of different industry accepted techniques for estimating gas flow from the landfill. We've done that. We've compared it to actual gas flows, and we've established through the historical tracking of gas flows to that model, a fairly accurate model as of now. That not only is predicting current, but future gas flows out of the landfill, all based on the amount of producible waste that goes into the landfill. So what you see here in this graph is we have one graph where we've estimated, which is the top of the blue line there, the landfill gas flow that is projected to come out of the landfill. From that, we can take that landfill gas flow and with the vendors in terms of electricity production, can convert that landfill gas and the methane and the BTU within that gas into how much electricity we can make. From that, we generate this electrical output line. We also have shown in this graph, in terms of our total landfill gas production, the amount that will go to the thermal oxidizer, the amount that will actually be used on site for electrical generation. So one of the things we're doing on this project to eliminate one of our risks is we're actually going to install some electrical generation on the landfill that will actually then provide the electricity for the current blower and flare system. It'll provide the electricity for all of our equipment. And then we're going to basically set up a net metering project for the landfill where you'll basically start making all your own electricity. Yeah, we'll process a good amount of the gas and then we'll utilize a bunch of it down at UC and sell power to them as well. So on the right side, we show the kilowatts per year. Electrical output is the green line shown there as well. Yeah, you can flip to the next slide. Here we're basically taking what is in the power purchase agreement, and we are taking our electrical sales and generating $1 million or per million of revenue per year. And so this is just a graph over by year of how much revenue we're going to be making. The bottom of the chart is we're taking out some of our big O&M expenses and we're graphing those. And then the orange line is the net. It is simply the top blue line, which is incoming revenue, minus the outgoing operational costs, which is the bottom green, yellow, and very narrow blue line. And the line in orange there is what we're expecting to be revenues minus operating expenses over the 20 years. This is a quick chart that summarizes that, but we're at about 2.9 million in revenue per year minus operational expenses of 666,000. So we're looking at net revenue to be about 2.3 million. And again, there are some factors in terms of landfill gas generation, control of operational costs, things of that nature, what we've dug into and can talk more later. So next slide, Caleb. Yeah, and this slide simply summarizes gross revenue. We subtract out the capital costs, which Caleb had covered. If I sum up all those operational costs over 20 years, it comes to be about 14 million, which leaves a project cost, if I sum up the 24 and the 13, of 38, with a net revenue over 20 years of about $24 million. You want to go to the next slide, Caleb? Or are you trying to let that absorb? So next steps, do you want to take this on, Caleb, or do you want me to run through this?
I see a hand raised.
Oh, sure. Yeah, if you want to ask the questions anytime, please.
Yeah, if you could back up, this is Silvera. Can you back up one slide?
Yep.
Explain to me that little asterisk right there. Before bond proceeds and debt service. What does that exactly does that mean for lay people like me?
So there's going to be a cost to the bond, and K&N is going to cover all of that. We've been instructed very wisely by the authority to stay in our lane, and K&N will explain how much that will cost. It's a nominal cost in my estimation, but I'm not a finance person, so that's all I can say before I get kicked under the table by Eric and Stacy to not talk about stuff I don't know anything about. So, but they will talk about that at the next one. But you can see that there's a gross amount of revenue there and a lot of contingency to see. I mean, if you understand the finance process. So
if I can, this is Eric. What I would say is just like our 07 bond, we have an amount of money, a little over 2 million a year that we've got to pay on that bond. So this says before bond proceeds, whatever bond payment we would have to take at, pay, yearly, annually on the landfill gas to energy bond that we took out. That's what that is. And as Caleb said, K&N will be presenting what they estimate that, an estimation of what that might look like. And then our debt service is our existing debt service. It's our existing bond payment that we have for the 07 bond. It's the closure fund amounts that we must put in. It's the costs of the debt that we already have in place, notwithstanding this project. So that would continue to be serviceable through these revenues.
So the 24 million would cover just the interest portion of that. And so if we did include the bond, we would add it to the gross revenue or add it to the top line, as I was instructed earlier, but I've been told not to talk about it, but you put that 24 million at the bond at the top, and then you would include, the principal and interest in there and a negative, but the 24 million would really just be covering the interest portion of it, not the principal portion of the payback. Anyway, K&N, I probably said too much. K&N
Yeah,
will
that's
cover
fine.
all
That's
of
fine.
that.
I'll keep you out of trouble. If you go back a couple more slides, when you talk about those projected amount of gas that we're going to create. So how do you figure that out? Is there an industry standard that says that we've looked at the amount of gas coming out of landfills for X amount of years, and we know based upon X that we're going to get X in return? Because if I look at my numbers, I can only zoom in so much here, but in the first couple of years, you got this kind of like line, and then it kind of plateaus out a little bit, and then it kind of goes back up again. But then once we get out to around the 2030 mark, it looks like it's just a straight line up, So how do we come up with those projected numbers?
Yeah, I'll take that one. The solid waste industry in the United States, the EPA has actually developed a first order decay model that is used by pretty much everybody to estimate gas generation at landfills. You put in the daily or the yearly tonnage into that model, and it looks at, based on a bunch of different studies, the composition of waste in the United States and how much organic material is in that waste. It basically starts to predict how much gas you get out of the landfill every year going forward. And what we do as an engineering firm is we take that model, and there are a couple of things you can adjust in it, like annual precipitation and some things like that, which we've pulled in your annual precipitation. But we can also then track our actual gas flow versus what the model is predicting. And we can start to figure out what our realistic curve is in terms of our gas flow at the landfill to the model once we've set it up for the landfill. And we can start to see if we're tracking a little bit high, a little bit low, and then we can adjust that curve to basically be dead on line with what our actual flows are. So we get to a point, and again, you've had a gas system out there for quite some years now, where what was our actual flow data and the model prediction, gets to a point where it's tracking pretty dead on. So we're fairly confident on that gas projection there.
Perfect. And then my next question is how the quality of the gas coming out of there, how does that change over time, and how does that affect the amount of electricity that you could produce based upon how dirty, at certain times of the year, is the gas dirtier than other times? Is it cleaner than other times? Or, and how does that factor into that? And are those factors, if so, are they figured into this chart?
Great question. The gas is generated in the landfill, is always generated. It's pretty consistent what the bugs will do, because it's actually bacteria that breaks down the organic material and makes the landfill gas. They're pretty consistent in the gas that they generate. What is inconsistent is our ability, when we start putting wells in the landfill and extracting the gas out of the landfill, to keep the landfill in compliance with their regulations, we probably pull a little harder than we need to. And therefore, we eventually get a little bit of ambient air from above the landfill going through the landfill cap and then gets captured by our gas system. So the gas quality at the landfill is really kind of a function of our design and operation of the gas system. So we can actually control that. And generally in the industry, you typically try to control the high 40 to 50% methane per cubic foot in the landfill gas. And we're doing that pretty closely right now at the landfill. We've actually done a lot of work on the landfill gas system in recent years, and we're starting to see improvements in the quality of the gas. But one of the reasons we're using microturbines to generate electricity down at the UC campus is that the microturbine is fairly robust in being able to handle a wide range of methane content in the gas. So with that unit for making the electricity, we're well within the operational range of that unit. So, and it would be a pretty catastrophic event for us not to be in that range. So we're pretty confident that'll be a low risk item for us going forward.
The landfill gas in and of itself actually takes several years to become sweet. It's kind of like a wine, for lack of a better analogy. It takes several years to go through those phases before it becomes a higher methane content. So in reality, you're going to be pulling and getting the sweeter and the good gas several years from now to have that high methane content. The gas that usually first comes out of where you place waste isn't as high as methane content as the older waste.
Got you. And then, so then the last question is what do you, they're talking about taking all organics, which I know we're never going to really get to zero organics. There's still going to be a piece that slips in here or there. But what does that do to you long term when you take all your organics out of your landfill?
Yeah, if we were to truly take all organics out of a landfill, but there is, we as a company do a tremendous amount in terms of organics diversion from landfills. And right now we're not seeing the buildup of facilities that the organics can go to outside of a landfill. We've seen a lot of green waste get diverted from landfills, but green waste is typically not actually a great generator of, there's too much wood and other products in there it takes too long to generate good gas. What you will eventually see is a flattening of the gas curve if you start to divert a lot more organics out of the landfill. But at the point in time, until we start seeing a lot more, anaerobic digestion and other facilities coming online to be able to handle that organics, we're not necessarily, we've taken into some account of that into the model, but we haven't really said, hey, it's going to zero and try to plummet our curve. We just don't see that realistically happening that quickly.
Perfect. Thank you. That's it for now.
Okay, Director Faria and then Director Perea. And there you go.
Thank you. On the next slide over, and that number there, the 24 million net revenue and then minus the bond service and debt service. So we're going to see a little bit of a profit on that. And if we do, is there a place where that profit is directed to go? Or is that going into particular operating funds for MCAG?
Yes, so excellent question. That would go to the existing debt service. So, we would be looking at our closure fund. We would be looking at our existing bond. We would be looking at all of our existing debts that we must pay off and any type of capital improvement projects that the state has asked us to do in a timely manner. We would have to respond within that time. And so these additional funds would be used for those purposes first.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
My question is, if you could go back to the production and usage slide that you just had up. There you go. I'm just curious. So the blue zone is production, and so you show the gas out at 2030 really increasing, but yet the outputs of the system are flat. Can you explain why?
Yeah, because we talked to UC Merced, and they could only take so much electricity. So in 2028, we will have enough landfill gas to generate all the electricity needed by your landfill and the UC Merced campus at full build out. So the reason that we could keep generating more electricity, but the UC Merced can't take it. So we just don't have anybody to sell it to. So we're installing as much capacity as what we can sell. And once we have more gas that we can generate that much, it just remains flat in terms of production of electricity going forward after that.
Yeah, if I could just add, this is Eric. I would also add that one of the factors in partnering with UC Merced was their ability to expand. They do have large areas around their properties, And so this would be something that if they chose to expand, then this system could serve that expansion.
All right, thank you. Great answer.
Would that be at an additional cost, Eric? Like they don't get it for free. Could we renegotiate that? Like price if they're above what they use?
Right. So Director Silvera, great question. We will get into the purchase power agreement in more detail later. But yes, right now that's a document that needs to come back to this board for approval, and those types of items would be discussed more intently in that agreement.
Well, I will tell you, Eric, you guys are doing a really good job of like being like a sitcom where you got the cliffhanger hanging out there. It's going to make me have to tune in for the next one.
Yeah, and I apologize for that. And I'm sorry.
I was going to say, when we have a 4-part workshop series, we have to keep you coming back.
I was only going to add, and Madam Chair, if I may, that any of our team is happy to have conversations with any of you. I am happy to meet with you, have any conversations with you anytime. So feel free to reach out to me, and I will put you in the right direction, or the executive director, and we will put you in the right direction. Happy to do that.
Hey, Director Perea, do you still have a question? Is your hand still up? All right, then it's Director Rodrigo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, one of the questions, Eric, is that, I know it's an exclusive contract, but, if we're able to reserve a small piece where, even if it's 5%, where, as long as they have all the needs met, that we can sell it to the public or another company, so that way we can, have extra income or extra, reserves for us. So, just for extra revenue. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that. I appreciate that comment very much. As we get into the agreement documents, we will discuss kind of why, how we got into the situation we're in, and we will discuss all the merits of those agreements and what we can and cannot do. But excellent point, note taken. Any other questions? Okay, Caleb, did we get through this last slide that you have here?
Really, just this last slide. Next items after, if this is approved, certify CEQA, which you kind of covered, finalize the power purchase agreement, complete the design, and then in that process, MOSTEC will be, again, doing some value engineering and working alongside us. Also purchasing equipment, the long lead items, which is their order equipment, construction, then startup and operation. That's what it's going to take to get this thing up and running. Is there any questions on that process? And if not, I'm done, but I'm more than willing to answer any questions on that.
Okay, so Madam Chair, if there are no further questions, I just want to recap that.
There's one. Director Kale.
Yeah, so when do we actually vote on this? That we agree with it or disagree with this project? Or am I missing a point that we already did?
No, Director Kale, this is Stacy. We have not. There have been previous actions that have allowed staff to develop the project up to where we are right now. The next step would be very simply whether or not the board wants to actually construct the project. And there are sub actions in that, but that's essentially what we're preparing this board for.
Right.
The question of when that action will be, once we go through the financial scenarios in the next workshop, and we have to finalize the power purchase agreement with the UC. So that is agreed to and teed up. It could be probably May. It could be April, but probably May. That we'll have this on the board to make the final call of green light to construct or not.
Yeah, okay. That's because I had way too many questions. But that goes we'll go on and wait for the next one, which is the financials, will help out a lot.
Yep.
Okay, thank
Okay, Director Perea.
Thank you, Chair. The workshop, right, we have a workshop scheduled for March 4th. Is that correct, with KNN?
That is correct.
And what time is that workshop?
That right now is scheduled for a 3 p.m. Yes, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So March 4th, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. That would be workshop 3 with KNN. And then the final workshop with UC Merced would be March 18. And that would be at your regular scheduled board meeting, just as it was today. So you would see that group call in at 4 p.m. on that board meeting date. And as Stacy said, you know, after those meetings, we would then seek direction. And I truly believe with the different agreements that we've got in place, the earliest, as Stacy said, would probably be May, so that we could come with a decision. And that concludes our workshop. So any questions? All right, Madam Chair and the board, thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation.
Madam Chair, did you
Yes.
want to open it up to the public if they had any questions?
We can do that. So let's see if the public has any questions. As I saw, there was a bunch of people on here, so.
There is, and just a reminder for folks, if you're on Zoom, raise your hand if you would like to ask a question or provide comment. And on the phone, press *9. And the instructions are on your screen. I do not see anyone raising their hand.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, then we are going to move into item number 18, which is the executive director's report, which is with Stacy. So go ahead, Stacy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say thank you to everyone who has stuck through this meeting. I know there was a lot. And I will say that the spring is going to be a really busy time for the board. So as you know, we'll continue with the landfill gas project workshops to the point where the board is comfortable to take action. We're also entering budget season. So we really try to maximize the time when we have our regular board meetings, which means they may run a little longer here and there, but that's trying to avoid scheduling a whole separate meeting on a whole separate day unless it's really, really warranted. So budget season starts with us. And of course, we've got multiple agency budgets that we try to cover. We will be breaking those up again. And we'll be presenting the MCAG transportation planning side budget here in draft form in March. And then it'll just roll out from there for transit and regional waste and then ultimate adoption. All three of those will be adopted before the end of the fiscal year before the June board meeting. So that's fair warning. And then I just again mentioned the March 4th date is new. Joy will send out a calendar invite and it'll look just like a regular board meeting invite on your calendars, and we'll get that agenda out. It'll also be recorded for anyone that might need it. And I will end it there. So unless there's any questions for me, thank you all for being patient. And I just have to say, I really, really appreciate how engaged the board has been on a lot of these really complex issues. I think we've had great discussion.
Okay, and there are no questions for Stacy. We're gonna move on to director's report, and we'll start with how about Director Silvera?
You read my mind, reverse order. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank everybody, staff, for getting that information out and answering all the questions that we had. And then so when everybody see my hat I'm wearing today is my it's yards. So Nab, thank you for sending that over. I appreciate it very much. And also just look, I know the work that Nab and our staff in the finance department put into these audit reports, and it's not lost on me. And when you walk out of it, and really the only finding that we have on there is really something that was out of our control with the pandemic. That says a lot to the work that they're doing. And so I just want, and Stacy, if you don't mind passing that along to Nav and his whole team, that it's much appreciated. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Director Rodrigo, since he's down here at the bottom here. Maybe he didn't hear me. Okay, then we'll go to Director McDaniel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry I was viewing Matt left us early and he had just started his town hall. So I was viewing that on the other side, and sorry for the interruption. I know this isn't a common practice of this board, but in honor of Jerry O'Banion, I was hoping maybe, Madam Chair, if we could adjourn this meeting in honor of our former colleague, Jerry O'Banion. He was a fantastic community leader, not just on the west side, but on the east side. And it was interesting reading his obituary, and they're saying what he represented now, but understanding he had a big portion when he was first elected into not only my district, District 3, but he was all the way into District 1. And as the populations grew, his district actually shortened. So if we could, if the board would be willing, and the chair, I'd like to adjourn this meeting in honor of Jerry O'Banion.
Yes, we have that on the agenda, actually. So great minds think alike. Okay, how about Director Pedroso?
I have nothing to report.
Okay, Director Perea?
I just have one thing. I would like to congratulate you on your new position, and I think you did an awesome job in today's meeting, and so thank you for that.
Thank you. Director Faria?
Nothing to report today. Thank you.
Okay. Director Nagy?
The report, thank you.
Okay, and Director Kale?
It's just nice to be heard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to second what Scotty said about Nav and all the hard work he's done. It looks great. My only complaint was I've never seen a Yards hat with a made into a bowler hat. That's all I ever wear. So that's all.
Okay,
we'll work on that.
It looks like Director Rodrigo jumped off. So I don't have anything at this time other than our hearts go out to the O'Banion family, and our community really has lost a leader, a community leader. So with that, let me see, hold on, I'm sitting in the dark now. With that, I would like to adjourn our meeting in memory of Jerry O'Banion. He was a colleague and an advisor and a friend, and we're going to miss him tremendously. So with that, I would like to say thank you so much for letting me have my first real meeting, and it was a challenge, and I'll learn all the cues. But with that, I would like to say we are done at 5:40 something. That's my 5:42. 5:42. All right. We will see you back here soon. Thank you.
Good job, Madam Chair. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.